The smell of paint was everywhere. Sharp, clean, like we were trying to scrub the past right off the walls. I had a brush in one hand, a rag in the other, and Ethan's voice trailing in from the hallway, muttering about a stuck drawer. This renovation, it was supposed to bring us closer. A reset. We joked about it over wine months ago, dreaming of new colors, a new headboard, maybe even new energy between us. But something already felt uneven, like the floor beneath me wasn't quite level anymore. I was cleaning out the bedroom closet when I noticed the edge of something wedged deep behind the cabinet lining. It looked like an old receipt at first, yellowed, brittle, probably trash. But when I pulled it free, unfolded it gently, everything in me paused. The handwriting wasn't mine. The words didn't belong here. I miss you every night. She'll never know what we had behind those walls. My fingers went numb before I even finished reading. It was signed with a name I didn't recognize. But that wasn't the part that cut me open. The part that shattered the air was knowing. It happened here. In our house. In the room where I dreamed. Cooked. Slept. Cried. I stood there, letter in hand, the walls suddenly feeling closer than they had a minute ago. All the laughter we'd painted over, the carpet we ripped up, the storage we cleared out. None of it had prepared me for this. It was like the house itself had been waiting, silently, to tell me. And now that it had, I couldn't unknow it. I couldn't unfeel it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just folded the letter again and tucked it inside my pocket like a splinter I didn't want to pull out. I kept painting, kept sanding, kept pretending. Ethan didn't notice a thing. He was fussing over the light switches, asking if I liked brushed nickel or matte black, like any of it mattered. I nodded, smiled even, but inside, I was somewhere else entirely. I started replaying years in reverse. Birthdays, holidays, quiet mornings with coffee in this very room. I searched them all for signs I had missed. A glance that lingered too long. A text he answered too fast. A laugh that wasn't meant for me. They were all there now, scattered in the corners like dust. And that name, the one at the bottom of the letter, it echoed. Not loudly, but enough to sting. I whispered it once, just to feel how it sat on my tongue. Strange. Foreign. And yet, she had once stood here, hadn't she? With him. Behind these same walls, touching what I thought was only mine. I felt violated by memories I hadn't even lived. Every creak in the floorboard became a whisper I couldn't quite translate. But I stayed silent. Not because I forgave him, but because I needed to understand the full shape of the lie. That night, when Ethan fell asleep beside me, snoring softly like he had nothing to hide, I lay awake tracing the ceiling with my eyes. The ceiling we'd just repainted together. Good as new, he'd said earlier. But I knew better now. Nothing here was new. Not really. I had cleaned every surface, dusted every shelf, but the rot wasn't in the wood. It was in the trust. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew this. If he had hidden pieces of himself in these walls, then maybe I could start hiding a few pieces of my own. The next morning, I made coffee just like I always did. Same mug, same spoon clinking gently against ceramic. Ethan came into the kitchen, kissed the top of my head, and joked about how sore his back was from crouching inside the linen closet. I smiled. Told him we were almost done. Almost. He didn't see my hands trembling slightly as I stirred the sugar. Didn't notice how long I stared at the steam rising, like it could show me what to do next. But I was already working on something, quietly, internally. A reconstruction of my own. Later that day, while he was on another quick errand, I pulled the letter from my sock drawer where I'd hidden it. I held it up to the light, studied every loop of her handwriting. There was something intimate about it, almost cruel, like she knew I'd find it someday. Or maybe she never thought I would. Either way, it was careless. And Ethan. He was counting on time to bury it. But time had turned, hadn't it? And I was no longer the woman who overlooked things. I was peeling back more than paint now. I was scraping at layers I hadn't dared to touch before. I didn't cry. Not even when I found her name in an old email chain buried in his archived folders. A former colleague he hadn't spoken to in years, or so he claimed. Her name sat there, quiet and unassuming, but I could feel it pulsing. My fingers hovered over the mouse as I traced the lie, breadcrumb by breadcrumb. Every detail I found was another chip in the foundation. And even as we polished floors and replaced fixtures, I knew this house was still holding secrets. But soon I'd start building something of my own inside it, and he'd never see it coming. I didn't say a word. Not to Ethan. Not to anyone. There was a strange power in the silence, like keeping the secret gave me the upper hand for the first time in years. He kept moving through our home with the same practiced ease, asking about curtain rods and grout colors, completely unaware that I was studying him like a stranger. Every smile, every offhanded excuse about work, every quick exit for errands, I watched it all. Not like a wife anymore, but like someone gathering evidence. And believe me, the evidence was starting to stack. There was a shift in him, subtle, but undeniable. The way he looked at his phone and tilted it slightly away. The tone in his voice when he answered certain calls. Lighter, careful, and the timing. Always just before dinner or right after I went upstairs. He thought he was being slick, but I saw it. I saw all of it. The same patterns that must have existed back then, when that other woman was sneaking into my life without me knowing. But this time, I wasn't in the dark. This time, I had the blueprint. Instead of confronting him, I leaned into the renovation. I picked finishes he'd barely glance at and let him think I needed his approval. I measured twice, drilled holes myself, and plastered a smile on my face when he told people how we had done it all. But inside, something was changing. I was rebuilding, not just the house, but myself, brick by brick, word by unspoken word. He kept telling me how beautiful everything was turning out, completely unaware that he was standing in the middle of a setup. And when I looked at him, I didn't see a husband anymore. I saw the man I was preparing to dismantle. Some nights, I'd sit on the floor of the guest room, the one we hadn't touched yet, with the letter spread out in front of me like a crime scene photo. I traced every loop of her script with my finger, whispering her words back to myself like an incantation. She'll never know. But I did know. And the more I let that sink in, the clearer everything became. This wasn't just betrayal. This was intrusion. Violation. She hadn't just taken my husband. She'd taken space in my home. And now I was taking it back. I started digging through old boxes we'd stored in the garage, not looking for memories exactly, looking for evidence. And sure enough, it didn't take long. A receipt for a boutique hotel 2 hours away. Bank withdrawals that didn't match up with any trips I remembered. And that same name again, hidden in an old email filter I hadn't touched in years. Piece by piece, I was unearthing the affair like an archaeologist of my own life. He had no idea I was excavating the past while he worried about tile samples. The strange thing was, the more I found, the calmer I became. It was like I needed confirmation, and now that I had it, I could move forward. Not with him, but with a plan. Something started forming in my mind. Something steady. Something deliberate. If he could build lies into the walls of our home, then I could build something too. But mine would be real. Mine would be quiet. And when it came time to show it, he wouldn't even recognize the woman holding the hammer. Ethan started working later again, or so he said. Quick meeting, client call, traffic was awful. I'd nod, say, okay, and keep folding laundry or scrolling through backsplash ideas on my tablet. But inside, I was watching the clock. I tracked the gaps in his stories the way a builder studies blueprints. Every delay, every excuse. They all fit into the framework I was quietly assembling. He thought I was still the same woman he lied to years ago, passive, forgiving, maybe even a little naive. But I wasn't, not anymore. I even started keeping a journal, not for therapy, for precision, times, names, dates, where he said he was, what actually lined up. I wasn't just preparing to leave, I was preparing to be believed, to build something unshakable. I wanted to make sure that when I acted, there'd be no questions left. And maybe part of me wanted him to feel what it was like to be outsmarted by someone who once trusted him with everything, to be the one caught off guard, because that's what betrayal does. It doesn't just break your heart, it sharpens your mind. One night, as I was brushing my teeth, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't flinch. That woman looking back? She wasn't broken, she wasn't desperate. She was waiting, steady, calculating, resilient. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't about saving a marriage. This was about reclaiming a space. My home, my body, my story. And if Ethan thought the worst was behind us, the old fights, the cold silences, then he had no idea what was being built right under his nose. I started small. A suggestion here, a casual comment there. Maybe we should get someone in to help with the closet shelves, I said one evening, swirling a spoon through my tea like it was just another thought. Ethan barely looked up from his phone. Sure, whatever you think. That was all I needed. The contractor I chose wasn't just skilled, he was someone I trusted, someone who understood discretion. I told him I wanted a special compartment installed in the new closet. Hidden storage, I said with a smile. He didn't ask questions. Good men rarely do. While Ethan was out, supposedly buying paint, I gave the contractor clear instructions. Behind the shelf, seamless, concealed. Just big enough for a few documents, and I filled it carefully. The letter, of course, unfolded and still stained with old grief. Then came the rest. Printouts of hotel invoices, screenshots of text threads I'd recovered from an old backup, even a few unexplained bank withdrawals. Evidence, not drama. No tears, no accusations. Just the truth, stacked neatly like files in a case he didn't even know was open. I remember standing there after the contractor left, staring at the finished shelf. It looked ordinary, clean, like every other shelf in every other home. But behind it? There was a story. My story. One I'd been forced to carry in silence, until now. I ran my fingers along the edge, feeling the smooth grain of new wood. It almost felt sacred. Like I'd built something sacred out of something rotten. Ethan walked in minutes later with a bag of takeout, smiling like the world was still intact. I smiled too, and asked if we should invite people over to see the finished work. He liked the idea instantly. A party, a house full of admiration, people marveling at what we'd created together. I could see it light up something in him, that hunger for validation. It made things easier. I let him pick the date, helped him draft the guest list, even suggested we cater from that Italian place his sister loved. All the while, I was rehearsing. Not what I'd say, that would come in time, but how I'd hold myself. Calm, unshaken. I wanted the truth to feel like a mirror held up to his face, one he couldn't look away from. In the days leading up to the party, I played the part so well I almost believed it. I laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when he passed by, even kissed his cheek goodnight. It was like acting in a play no one else knew had a final scene already written. But when he left for those mysterious calls or last-minute errands, I'd return to that closet. Just stand there, hand pressed to the hidden panel. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about clarity, about setting the stage in a way that couldn't be undone, denied, or rewritten. I even left a note in the compartment, not addressed to him, not signed, just a simple sentence written in my own hand. If you're reading this, then the walls finally spoke. It felt right, like I was giving the house a voice after all it had held in silence. Ethan, meanwhile, was too busy choosing wine pairings and playlist tracks to notice the weight shifting beneath his feet. Let him plan. Let him preen. Because when the night came, the truth wouldn't just fall into the room. It would open like a door he never saw coming. The day of the party arrived crisp and golden, the kind of late afternoon light that makes everything look soft and innocent. I lit candles, fluffed pillows, straightened napkins with military precision. Every detail was curated to whisper home, warmth, welcome. Ethan moved through the space like a host in his element, charming and confident, not realizing he was about to become the main act in a story he didn't even know was being told. Guests began trickling in, family, neighbors, friends we hadn't seen in ages. Laughter floated through the air like perfume. But underneath it, I felt steel. I wore a dress he hadn't seen before, something elegant but understated. Something that let me feel grounded, untouchable. I greeted everyone with grace, offered wine and compliments, smiled as they gushed about the renovations. "It looks amazing," they said. "You two really outdid yourselves." I thanked them. I meant it. Not because of what we'd built together, but because of what I'd hidden inside it. There was something poetic about it, really. A housewarming built on ruins. A celebration balanced on a truth no one had seen. Yet. As the evening rolled on, I felt the moment rising, like a tide under the floorboards. Not yet, I told myself. Let the music play, let the laughter echo one more time. This was the final layer. Not drywall, not paint, but performance. And when it peeled away, everything would be exposed. Ethan clinked his glass to get everyone's attention, starting to thank them for coming. I stepped forward before he could finish, laying a gentle hand on his arm. "Actually," I said, turning to the room with a calm smile, "I'd love to say a few words, too." The room quieted the way only a gathering full of polite people can. Wine glasses paused midair, soft chuckles trailing off, everyone turning their attention toward me. I smiled, not wide, not stiff, just enough to let them know I was grateful. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, voice steady, warm, practiced like a host, but beating with something far deeper underneath. This house has meant a lot to us. It's seen birthdays, holidays, midnight arguments, and Sunday pancakes. It's held so much, and recently, it revealed something too. I felt Ethan stiffen beside me, not visibly, not yet. But I knew him. I could feel the shift in the air between us. "We found something during the renovation," I continued, turning slightly toward the bedroom doorway. "Behind a wall, tucked away in the back of the closet." My heels clicked softly on the hardwood as I walked down the hall. The room followed me with their eyes. Ethan stayed frozen, probably still trying to guess where I was going. My fingers curled gently around the closet handle. One breath, and I opened it. There it was. Neat. Simple. A small envelope resting exactly where I'd placed it. I reached for it slowly, deliberately, and turned back to the group now crowded in the hallway entrance. "Sometimes," I said softly, holding it up, "we think we know everything inside our home. Every corner, every creak. But some things are buried, quiet, until they're not." I unfolded the letter in front of them. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. And then I read it aloud. Every word. "I miss you every night. She'll never know what we had behind those walls." The room went completely still. Not a cough, not a whisper. Just the quiet hum of disbelief pressing against the walls. I let the silence sit, let the weight of the words linger in the air like smoke after a fire. Ethan's face had drained of all color. He didn't move. His eyes darted toward me, then to the paper in my hands, then to the people behind me. His lips parted, maybe to deny, maybe to run. But I didn't give him the chance. I simply met his gaze, steady and unflinching. He knew exactly what this was. Someone gasped. I think it was his sister. A friend in the back cleared their throat, awkward and unsure. I stepped forward just a little, folding the letter again, returning it gently to the envelope. That was behind the wall, I said calmly. Hidden like it was never meant to be found. But this house, it tells the truth. Eventually. The closet stood open behind me, like a wound that had finally been uncovered. I could feel the heat of a dozen eyes on Ethan now. Not mine. Theirs. He looked small, almost childlike. He still hadn't said a word. I turned back to our guests, my guests now, and smiled softly. You know, it's funny. We spent months repainting, fixing cracks, sanding the floors, making everything look brand new. And in the process, this house gave me a gift I never expected. I paused, not for effect, but because I felt it. The ending rising in my throat like truth, finally given breath. Now that the house is clean, I glanced once more at Ethan, then away. I think it's time I do the same with my life. No one applauded. No one dared. The moment held its breath, heavy and sharp. Ethan's mouth finally moved, a whisper of my name barely audible, but I didn't respond. I wasn't performing for him. I wasn't seeking apology or explanation. I was closing a chapter, in front of witnesses. The kind of closure that doesn't ask permission. I handed the envelope to his sister. Not as proof, but as inheritance. Let her see what her perfect brother had built into my home while everyone else admired the crown molding. Someone quietly backed out of the room. Another pretended to check their phone. People began to scatter, murmuring excuses about early mornings and traffic. The wine glasses were still half full, the music still humming faintly in the background. But the celebration had ended the moment I said her words aloud. Ethan stood there, his hands open at his sides, as if begging the room, or me, for something to hold on to. But I wasn't there to offer lifelines anymore. I was done painting over cracks. I walked past him without touching his arm, without looking back. Just a slight nod to the contractor who had been invited not for aesthetics, but for closure. I stood in the center of the living room once more, surrounded by the walls we had rebuilt, and the truth I had set free. I raised my glass one last time. To new beginnings, I said, to no one and to everyone. Then I set it down, turned off the music, and stepped into the next part of my life. Quietly, on my own terms, and with nothing left to hide. The morning after, I woke to silence. Not the awkward kind that fills a house after a fight, but a deeper, emptier kind. The kind that follows something final. Ethan wasn't there. He'd left sometime in the night, or maybe just vanished the moment the mask cracked. I made myself coffee. Same kitchen, same cup. But everything felt different, like the house had exhaled. The walls, now scrubbed of lies, didn't echo with his voice anymore. It was mine I heard now, clearer, steadier, and I liked the sound of it. He called, of course, several times, left voicemails, long ones, sad ones, angry ones. But I didn't listen, not because I hated him. Hate takes too much energy. I was just done. Done with the spin, the charm, the illusion. I let the phone ring while I boxed up his things. I kept only what belonged to me, what was mine before him, and what I'd built in spite of him. The rest? I donated. A woman from a local shelter came by for the bags, and I told her honestly, there's nothing broken in there, just Things I don't need anymore. By the end of that week, I had met with the realtor, signed the paperwork, and finalized the transfer. He didn't even contest it. Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he knew I had planned every inch of this with precision. I had moved everything, title, utilities, insurance, into my name weeks before the party. It wasn't petty. It was survival. It was claiming something back from the ashes. The house wasn't mine forever. It didn't need to be. It just needed to be the last place I let someone bury me beneath their lies. And now, it was ready to be passed on. Clean. I found an apartment on the other side of the city. Modern, minimal, full of light. The kind of space where nothing creaked, nothing whispered. It didn't have history, and that was the point. I didn't want echoes. I wanted clarity. I signed the lease without hesitation, packed what little I truly cared about, and drove there with the windows down. It felt like shedding an old skin, one I'd worn for far too long. When I walked in for the first time, keys still warm in my palm, I didn't cry. I just stood in the center of the room and breathed. There were no ghosts here. No letters hidden behind drywall, no memories painted into corners, just a blank canvas. And this time, I'd choose the colors myself. I picked white curtains, soft rugs, a simple teak table by the window. Every piece I placed had intention, not to impress anyone, not to perform, just to belong, to reflect a version of me I hadn't seen in years, one that didn't shrink, one that didn't wait to be chosen or rescued or noticed. This home didn't just belong to me, it mirrored me. Ethan sent one last email, a long one. He apologized, tried to explain, claimed he never stopped loving me, as if love were a thing you could tuck behind a wall and forget. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The silence between us now wasn't empty. It was earned. It was full of everything I had reclaimed. Every morning in that new space felt lighter, brighter. Like each drawer, each room was a soft promise. No more secrets. No more hiding. Just sunlight. And the sound of my own footsteps, finally going in the direction I chose. On the final day of closing, I returned to the house one last time. It was empty now, stripped of furniture, noise, and shadows. I walked through each room slowly, brushing my fingertips along freshly painted walls, not with sadness, but with a strange sense of gratitude. This place had tested me, betrayed me, but it had also revealed me to myself. I had stood here and cracked open the silence. I had reclaimed my voice. And now I was ready to leave without looking back. I met the contractor outside. He was leaning against his truck, sun on his face, hands tucked into his worn jeans. I handed him the final check with a small smile. "Thank you," I said. He didn't ask for what. Maybe he already knew. He nodded once respectfully, like someone who understood that not all blueprints come on paper. Some are drawn in quiet strength, long nights, and the courage to let go. He tipped his cap and drove off. And just like that chapter closed with a soft click of a car door. When I got back to the apartment, I left the key from the old house on the counter. Just a piece of metal now, no longer a symbol. I poured myself a glass of wine, barefoot, sun slipping across the floor. I took a sip and smiled. Not because I'd won. This wasn't a victory. It was a resurrection. I stood in a space with no hidden compartments, no folded lies, no dusty evidence, just clean walls, and me, whole, awake, and finally free.
Clear your desk by the end of the day, Holly. Human Resources will handle the exit paperwork. The words on my computer screen blurred as I read them again. After 5 years of dedicated service to Summit Edge Logistics, all I got was a cold, impersonal email. 3 days. That's all I had taken to bury my father. 3 days of approved bereavement leave. We need people who prioritize their work, the email continued. as if attending my father's funeral was an optional social event I had chosen over filing quarterly reports. I sat back in my chair, the leather squeaking in the silence of the early morning. The Boise office was still mostly empty, the sky outside just beginning to brighten with dawn. I had come in early, eager to catch up on work after my brief absence. My name is Holly Peterson, and until approximately 2 minutes ago, I was the regional team lead of the highest performing division at Summit Edge Logistics. At 34, I had built not just a career, but a team that felt like family. We celebrated birthdays together, supported each other through difficult times, and pushed one another to excel professionally. I looked around at my workspace, the small cactus my team had gifted me last Christmas, the framed photo of us all at the company retreat, the handwritten thank you notes from team members I had mentored. 5 years of my life condensed into a few personal items that would fit in a cardboard box. The termination notice attached to the email was signed by Dan Weaver, my direct supervisor who had personally approved my bereavement leave just last week. Failure to maintain adequate presence during critical operational periods, it read. My father's death apparently fell during one of these undefined critical periods. I didn't cry. I didn't slam my fist on the desk or storm into Dan's office demanding an explanation. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took a photograph of the email, then forwarded it to my personal account. Then I shut down my computer, stood up, and began methodically packing my things. By the time other employees started trickling in, my desk was half cleared. Tanya from accounting was the first to notice. "Holly, what's happening?" she asked, her eyes widening at the sight of my box. "I've been let go," I replied simply. "What? Why?" Apparently taking approved bereavement leave to bury my father wasn't showing proper priority for my work. Tanya's face transformed from confusion to outrage. "That's not right. Have you talked to Paula? The regional manager should know about this." "No," I said, carefully wrapping my cactus in newspaper. "I'm not going to fight it, but I won't forget it either." When you work closely with people for years, you learn to read their expressions. As I continued packing, more of my team members arrived. Jason was the first of my direct reports to hear the news, his usual cheerful grin vanishing instantly. "This is bull," he started, but I cut him off with a small shake of my head. "It's done, Jason. Dan made his decision. But we just finished the Newbrook merger last month. Profits are up 18% this quarter because of your planning." I smiled sadly. Apparently that wasn't enough. By 9:30, all 7 of my core team members had gathered around my desk in silent solidarity. Ethan, our logistics specialist who rarely showed emotion, looked like he might punch a wall. Veronica, our client relations manager, was openly crying. Behind them stood Michael, Luis, Diane, Gabriella, and Kayla, each with expressions ranging from disbelief to fury. "You can't leave," Veronica insisted. "The Wilson account renewal is next week. The Hernandez shipping contract is in negotiations. None of us knows the system like you do." I finished taping up my box. Dan should have thought of that before he fired me for attending my father's funeral. The severity of what I'd just said hung in the air. My father, gone just a week ago. The funeral soil still fresh. And now this betrayal from a company I had poured my soul into. "I need everyone back at their desks," came a sharp voice from behind us. Dan Weaver stood there, arms crossed, his thin face set in a disapproving frown. "We have deadlines to meet." No one moved. "Now," he added, his voice rising slightly. After a long moment, my team dispersed, each giving me a meaningful look as they returned to their workstations. Dan approached me, lowering his voice. "This could have been handled with more discretion if you'd waited until the end of the day to pack up." I met his gaze steadily. "Like the discretion you showed in firing me via email after approving my bereavement leave?" His jaw tightened. "Business needs change rapidly. Summit Edge needs people who understand that priorities shift. Your father's passing was unfortunate, but don't, I warned, my voice deadly quiet. Don't finish that sentence, Dan. For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered across his face. Then he straightened, adjusting his tie. Human Resources is expecting you. Please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. I picked up my box. Don't worry, I won't make a scene. But remember this moment, Dan. You might find it important later. The Human Resources office was clinical. White walls, minimal decoration, and Barbara Kent's sympathetic but practiced expression. She was new to the company, having joined just 6 months ago, and I could see she was uncomfortable with the situation. I'm sorry about this, Holly, she said, sliding separation papers across her desk. And I'm very sorry about your father. Thank you, I replied, scanning the documents. Standard severance, 2 weeks' pay, a non-disparagement clause. A reminder of my non-compete agreement, which prohibited me from working for direct competitors for 6 months. Is there anything I should know about why this happened? Barbara asked cautiously. This seems abrupt. I debated how much to share, then decided on the truth. I pulled out my phone and showed her the email. 3 days of approved bereavement leave, and I'm fired for not prioritizing work. Barbara's professional demeanor slipped, her eyes widening. This is the actual termination notice? Just an email? No performance improvement plan? No documented warnings? No, nothing. She frowned, making a note on her legal pad. I need to verify some things with the legal department. Would you excuse me for a moment? While Barbara stepped out, I gazed through the window. From this floor, I could see the Boise River winding through the city. My father had loved fishing that river. He'd taught me patience there, standing in waders as the current rushed past our knees. The river moves, Holly girl, he'd say, but the rocks stay steady. Be like the rocks. Barbara returned 20 minutes later, her expression carefully neutral, but her tight smile told me everything. Nothing would change. Unfortunately, Idaho is an at-will employment state, she began. The company is within its rights to... I understand, I interrupted, signing the documents without further argument. Summit Edge can do whatever it wants, just like I can. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Off the record. This isn't right. If you wanted to pursue action, I don't, I said firmly. But thank you. As I walked through the main office toward the exit, I felt eyes following me. My team watched silently, their faces somber. I gave them a small smile, my last act as their leader. Outside, the September air was surprisingly warm. I placed my box in the trunk of my car and sat in the driver's seat, allowing myself a moment to process everything. My phone chimed with a text message, then another, and another. Jason. This is wrong. What can we do? Veronica. Are you okay? Can we meet up later? Ethan. Dan's a spineless jerk. The team is furious. More messages poured in. Expressions of outrage, support, loyalty. These people weren't just colleagues. They were my professional family. I started my car, a plan already forming in my mind. I wouldn't fight Summit Edge directly. I wouldn't sue, though I probably had grounds. No, I would be strategic, patient, like my father taught me. The rocks stay steady while the river rushes past. My phone rang. It was Hank Fleming, the CEO of Vertex Transport Systems, Summit Edge's biggest competitor. We'd met at an industry conference last year and kept in touch. He'd been trying to recruit me for months. It was time to return his call. The Vertex Transport Systems office was everything Summit Edge wasn't. Open concept, collaborative workspaces, and large windows framing the Boise skyline. Hank Fleming, a burly man with a silver beard and keen eyes, welcomed me with a firm handshake. "I've been hoping you'd call," he said, guiding me to a conference room. Though, I admit, I didn't expect it would be under these circumstances. Word traveled fast in our industry. Hank already knew about my termination, though not the details. I filled him in as we sat down, showing him Dan's email. "That's not just bad management," Hank said, frowning. "That's inhumane. Bereavement leave exists for a reason." "Summit Edge has always valued profits over people," I replied. "I just never thought I'd be on the receiving end." Hank leaned forward. "I'll be blunt, Holly. I want you on my team. Vertex is expanding our Pacific Northwest operations, and we need someone with your expertise. The division director position is yours if you want it." My heart skipped. Division director, a significant step up from my role at Summit Edge. More responsibility, more authority, better pay. "What about my non-compete?" I asked. Hank smiled. "Our legal team has reviewed it. It's overly broad and likely unenforceable. Plus, we'd cover any legal expenses if Summit Edge tried to enforce it." "I'd need to think about it," I said carefully. "Of course," Hank replied. "Take the weekend. We can talk specifics on Monday." That evening, I met Veronica and Jason at Riverfront Brewing, a small pub away from downtown where we wouldn't likely run into other Summit Edge employees. They arrived together, their expressions a mix of anger and concern. "How are you holding up?" Veronica asked, sliding into the booth. "I'm all right," I assured them. "It's been a challenging couple of weeks, but I'll land on my feet." Jason snorted. "Dan's a fool. The office is in chaos already. Nobody knows where the Henderson proposal files are stored, and the system access you had hasn't been transferred to anyone else." "That sounds like a Dan problem," I replied, taking a sip of my water. Veronica leaned forward. "It's more than that. Everyone's talking, not just our team. People are furious about how you were treated." I hadn't expected that. "Really?" "You were respected, Holly," Jason said. "Not just by us. The way Dan handled this. People are scared now. If they do this to you, their star team lead, what would they do to anyone else?" Veronica nodded. "Paula's been asking questions. The regional manager looks worried." "Good," I said simply. As we talked, more texts arrived from other team members. Similar stories of disorganization, frustration, and anger at management. Summit Edge was feeling my absence already. "What will you do now?" Jason asked. I hesitated. "I've had an offer. From Vertex." Their eyes widened. "But my non-compete—" "Those aren't always enforceable," Veronica said quickly. She worked with contracts daily and knew the legalities. "Especially if they fired you without cause." That's what Vertex's legal team said, but it's still a risk. Jason's phone buzzed. He checked it and frowned. "Dan's calling an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Saturday. He's never done that before." "The Wilson account review is due Monday," Veronica explained to me. "Nobody can find your analysis files." I smiled slightly. Those files were properly stored on the company server, but my particular organizational system wasn't immediately obvious to others. I hadn't anticipated this would become an issue, but I couldn't deny feeling a flicker of satisfaction. "I should get going," I said, gathering my purse. "Early appointment tomorrow." As I stood to leave, Jason caught my eye. "Holly, if you did go to Vertex, hypothetically speaking, would they be hiring?" I paused, studying their faces. "Hypothetically, yes, they're expanding rapidly." The look that passed between Jason and Veronica told me everything. Saturday morning, I met with Vincent Torres, an employment lawyer recommended by a friend. His office was small but elegant, with diplomas from prestigious universities adorning the walls. I explained my situation, showing him the email and termination notice. "This is textbook wrongful termination. Vincent said, removing his glasses. Firing someone for taking approved bereavement leave could be argued as both a breach of contract and a violation of good faith. I'm not interested in suing, I clarified. I just want to understand my options regarding my non-compete agreement. Vincent reviewed the document carefully. This is overly restrictive. 6 months prohibition on working for competitors within a 300-mile radius? That's essentially telling you to leave the industry or relocate. Is it enforceable? I asked. In Idaho? It's questionable, especially given the circumstances of your termination. Courts typically won't enforce non-competes when the employer acts in bad faith. He leaned back in his chair. What's your plan, Holly? Vertex Transport Systems has offered me a position. Better title, better pay. Vincent nodded. Summit Edge would have to prove that you're causing them actual harm by working there. Given that they terminated you, that's a difficult argument to make. He scribbled some notes. I'd say proceed with caution, but don't let this non-compete prevent you from earning a living. Over the weekend, my phone continued buzzing with messages from my former team. The emergency Saturday meeting had apparently been tense. Dan was pressuring everyone to take on additional responsibilities to cover my absence, with no extra compensation. The Wilson account files had been located, but nobody fully understood my analysis methodology. By Sunday evening, I had made my decision. Monday morning, I called Hank Fleming. I accept your offer, I told him, but I have one condition. Name it, Hank replied. I want to build my own team. If my former colleagues from Summit Edge apply to Vertex, I want them to receive fair consideration. Absolutely, Hank agreed. If they're half as talented as you, we'd be lucky to have them. That afternoon, I signed my contract with Vertex, Division Director of Pacific Northwest Operations. The salary was 40% higher than what I'd been making at Summit Edge, with better benefits and a sign-on bonus. As I left Vertex's offices, I checked my phone to find 7 new messages, one from each core member of my former team. They all wanted to meet for coffee. Privately. Tuesday morning, I sat at a quiet corner table in a small coffee shop downtown, waiting. Jason arrived first, then Veronica. One by one, Ethan, Luis, Diane, Gabriella, and Kayla joined us until we filled 2 tables pulled together. Summit Edge is imploding, Ethan said without preamble. Dan's micromanaging everyone. Paul is breathing down his neck, and clients are asking questions. The Wilson account is threatening to pull out, Veronica added. They wanted to know why you weren't handling their renewal. I sipped my coffee, listening as each shared similar stories of chaos and frustration. We heard you've accepted a position at Vertex, Jason finally said. The others grew quiet, watching me intently. News travels fast, I observed. We want to come with you, Veronica stated firmly. The others nodded in agreement. I studied their faces. You all have good positions at Summit Edge, secure jobs. Are you sure you want to risk that? What security? Luis asked bitterly. If they'd fire you for attending your father's funeral, none of us are safe. Vertex is hiring, I said carefully. I can't promise anything, but I can refer you. Each of you would need to apply formally. We already have, Gabriella revealed, pulling out printed copies of confirmation emails. All 7 of us. Yesterday. I couldn't hide my surprise. You applied before talking to me? We trust you, Holly, Kayla said simply. Where you go, we go. I felt a surge of emotion, gratitude mixed with vindication. Let me make some calls. The following Monday, my phone rang at 7:30 a.m. The caller ID displayed Paula McCormick, Summit Edge's regional manager. Holly, Paula's voice had a forced calmness. We need to talk. Good morning, Paula, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. What can I do for you? I've just received 7 resignation letters, all from your former team, all effective immediately. There was a pause. Care to explain? I took a slow breath. I'm not sure what explanation you're looking for. I don't work for Summit Edge anymore. They're all going to Vertex, where you just started as division director. Her voice hardened. This doesn't look coincidental. People make career choices for various reasons, Paula. Perhaps you should ask Dan why your top-performing team is leaving en masse. This is about your termination, isn't it? She sounded resigned now. I've reviewed the situation. Dan didn't consult me before letting you go. I would never have approved it. That's between you and Dan, I replied. Though I'm curious why Summit Edge's regional manager wasn't involved in terminating a team lead. Paula sighed. Dan claimed it was an urgent performance issue that couldn't wait for my return from the Seattle conference. I trusted his judgment. Clearly that was a mistake. I said nothing, letting the silence grow uncomfortable. Look, Holly, Paula finally continued. I'm prepared to offer you your position back, with a 10% raise and a formal apology. We need your expertise. The Wilson account is threatening to walk. I appreciate the offer, Paula, but I've accepted a position elsewhere. We'll match whatever they're paying, plus 15%. It's not about the money. Then what would it take? There was desperation in her voice now. 7 key employees walking out simultaneously is devastating. The operational knowledge alone. It would take time travel, I interrupted. Going back to when my father died, and Summit Edge showing basic human decency instead of punishing me for grieving. The line went quiet. I need to go, Paula. I start my new position today, and I don't want to be late. Your non-compete, she began. Feel free to have your legal team contact mine, I replied evenly. Though they might want to review the circumstances of my termination first. After hanging up, I drove to Vertex's offices, arriving early to prepare for the day. Hank met me in the lobby, beaming. We're considering all 7 of your former colleagues, he said. Their qualifications are impressive. Interviews start Wednesday. Thank you for giving them a fair chance, I replied. Fair chance? Holly, they're top talent. Summit Edge's mistake is our gain. 2 days later, I received another call, this time from Barbara Kent in Human Resources at Summit Edge. I shouldn't be telling you this, she said quietly, but Dan Weaver has been placed on administrative leave pending review. Paula's launching an investigation into management practices, particularly around bereavement and time-off policies. That's good to hear, I said genuinely. The board of directors is involved now, Barbara continued. Losing an entire specialized team to a competitor has triggered alarm bells. They're reviewing all terminations from the past year. By Friday, all 7 of my former team members had received and accepted offers from Vertex. We met for dinner to celebrate, raising glasses in a toast. To new beginnings, Veronica said. And to Holly, Jason added, who taught us what real leadership looks like. The following week, I received a formal letter from Summit Edge, acknowledging my wrongful termination and offering a settlement to avoid litigation. I accepted it, not for the money, but for the official admission that they had been wrong. That same day, the Wilson account signed with Vertex, bringing their business to us after learning that their preferred team now worked under my direction. The river had moved, but we had remained steady, like rocks, just as my father had taught me. 3 months later, I stood at the front of Vertex's largest conference room, presenting our quarterly results to the executive team. The numbers spoke for themselves: 30% growth in our division, 4 major client acquisitions, 3 of them former Summit Edge accounts, and operational efficiency improvements that had reduced costs by 22%. Exceptional work, Holly, Hank said when I finished. You and your team have exceeded every projection. I smiled. My team deserves the credit. They've been remarkable. After the meeting, I returned to my office to find my 7 core team members waiting with a cake. What's this for? I asked. It's been exactly 3 months since we all jumped ship together, Jason explained. We're celebrating our Independence Day. I laughed. You're all ridiculous. But happy, Veronica added. Seriously, Holly, everyone's thriving here. It was true. Each team member had grown professionally in their new roles at Vertex. They had more autonomy, better resources, and were finally receiving recognition for their contributions. Most importantly, they were valued as people, not just productivity machines. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Summit Edge Logistics announces restructuring amid client exodus. I showed it to the group. I heard they lost the Hernandez contract last week, Ethan said, cutting cake slices. That's 20% of their Pacific Northwest revenue. Dan's gone, Luis added. Cleared out his office Friday. Paula's trying to save what's left, but I felt no pleasure in Summit Edge's struggles, only a sense of justice. The company wasn't failing because we had left. It was failing because its leadership had created a culture where employees were disposable, where attending a father's funeral was considered a lack of commitment. To Summit Edge, I raised my water glass. May they learn that a company is only as strong as how they treat their people. And to Holly, Gabriella added, who showed us we deserved better. 6 months after joining Vertex, I received an unexpected lunch invitation from Paula McCormick. She'd left Summit Edge and joined a management consulting firm specializing in organizational culture. We met at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Boise River. Paula looked different, more relaxed. The perpetual stress lines around her eyes softened. Thank you for meeting me, she began. I wanted to apologize properly for what happened. You weren't directly responsible, I reminded her. No, but I created the environment that made it possible. She sighed. After you and your team left, everything unraveled. The board brought in external consultants to evaluate what went wrong. The report wasn't flattering to any of us in leadership. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. Summit Edge is being acquired by Meridian Shipping, Paula revealed, at a fraction of its previous valuation. They're basically buying the client list and physical assets. The news didn't surprise me. Summit Edge had been hemorrhaging clients and talent for months. What about Dan? I asked. Still unemployed, last I heard. His reputation in the industry. She trailed off. Let's just say your story has circulated widely. I hadn't spread the details of my termination, but I hadn't hidden them either. When asked why I'd left Summit Edge, I told the simple truth. I've learned a valuable lesson from all this, Paula continued. Now I'm helping other companies avoid the same mistakes. As we finished lunch, Paula asked the question I sensed had been on her mind all along. Was it worth it? Walking away quietly instead of fighting? I thought about my team at Vertex, thriving, motivated, and treated with respect. I thought about the clients who had followed us, who now received better service. I thought about my father, who had taught me that sometimes the strongest response isn't the loudest. Yes, I replied simply. The results speak for themselves. 1 year after that fateful email that had changed the course of my career, Vertex named me Executive Vice President of Operations for the entire Northwest region. My division had become the company's crown jewel, efficient, innovative, and boasting the highest employee satisfaction scores in the organization. Each of my 7 team members had been promoted as well. Jason now led his own division. Veronica had transformed our client relations approach and earned recognition throughout the industry. The others had similarly distinguished themselves, their talents finally receiving the appreciation they deserved. On the anniversary of my termination from Summit Edge, I received a small package in the mail. Inside was my old cactus plant, now slightly larger but still thriving, with a note from Barbara Kent. Rescued this from your desk. Thought you might want it back now. Summit Edge closes for good next week. I placed the cactus on my windowsill, where it would get plenty of sunlight. Like me, it had survived being discarded, and found a better place to grow. That evening, I drove to the Boise River and stood on the bank where my father and I used to fish. The water flowed steadily around the rocks, just as it always had. I thought about how a single moment, a cold email terminating my employment, had ultimately led to greater success and happiness, not just for me, but for everyone who had followed me. "You were right, Dad," I whispered to the river. "Sometimes you need to stay steady and let the current do its work." As I looked back on my journey from terminated team lead to executive vice president, I realized my revenge hadn't been in destroying Summit Edge. My revenge had been in building something better. A workplace where bereavement leave wasn't viewed as a lack of commitment, where people were valued beyond their productivity metrics, where leadership meant empowering others rather than controlling them. The greatest revenge wasn't in tearing down what had hurt me, but in creating something that made the old system obsolete. My father would have been proud of that. Looking toward the future, I felt nothing but gratitude for the path that had brought me here, even the painful parts. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes, if you remain as steady as the rocks while the river of change rushes past.